themselves their masks. The entire hospital staff was like, this is private property. You can't come in here. You don't have a warrant. I can see why the hospital staff would be defending that space, because that is there for patient care. That is for the sick or the infirm people to get care. They're not there to, administer ice and arrest people. It created a whole total disruption, total chaos. And I think what's going to happen is, unfortunately, some people are going to innocently get killed out of this. I mean, these are the situations we've had in this country historically with racial profiling. People end up getting killed. It's just a dangerous situation, and I think it's a slippery slope, and that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Hinda, you're on.
Thank you, and I appreciate you saying that, Hinda. I had the exact same thing. I went to college in the Boston area during 9/11. And because of my Middle Eastern sounding first name, I would get quote unquote randomly stopped at every opportunity. They actually printed, there were 4 S's, which I assume stood for stop, but maybe it stood for something else. And the 20th time out of 20 that I was randomly stopped, I looked at the TSA guy or whatever he was and said, "Let me guess, random search?" He goes, "Sir, I'm not talking to you yet." Like, okay. Then he says to me, "Sir, you've been randomly selected for a search." That kind of stuff, for me, was a relatively minor inconvenience. It was annoying. I'm a born in the U.S., multi-generation American, and, just the experience is invasive and violating. For a lot of people, it's a hell of a lot worse than anything I have to face, that's for sure. I was very happy when global entry and TSA pre, all that stuff happened, because it was a way for me to avoid this. But, you can't avoid the color of your skin. And these people are very clearly, and now out in the open, targeting people based on how they look. We live in a classically liberal country. It's based on classically liberal values. Collective punishment is supposed to be against that. Law enforcement is supposed to have cause. There's all kinds of laws. We're supposed to be a nation under law. That's not happening. I mean, this is such an affront to supposed American values. And, we've seen this many, many times. I mean, in my own lifetime, my politics was largely shaped by growing up in Pete Wilson's California. He was the governor here in the 90s. And his main thing was blaming immigrants for everything, right? They were the scapegoat for any problem that anyone ever had. And he went real hard after, the quote-unquote illegals. You know what happened in California? It went from being a purple state, where we would essentially have the governorship, go swing to and fro between the parties, to being one of the deepest blue states in the country. The next time I saw this politics really rear its ugly head in a very fulsome way was in Arizona. They passed, I believe it was SB 1070 or 1050, something like that. It was colloquially or locally known as the Driving While Brown Law, or Driving While Brown Act. And it enabled, essentially, law enforcement to pull over anyone who they thought, quote-unquote, looked illegal. And you know what that did to Arizona? It turned Arizona from being the bastion of conservatism into being a purple state where most of the statewide offices are held by Democrats. This is terrible on a humanitarian scale. It's terrible for our democracy, because it's people not following the laws. I refuse to call ICE law enforcement at this point, because that's not what they're doing. They're selectively choosing who they want to terrorize. I mean, that bullshit, and pardon my language, in MacArthur Park, of dressing up like they're doing some kind of, military exercise, like they're trying to intimidate North Korea. But the quote-unquote opponent is Angelenos, the people of Los Angeles. Like, are you kidding me? There's going to be a political price to pay, and I feel terrible for the people who are getting caught up already. And I have to say, as a Jewish person, the famous poem, which I never get exactly right, of, first they came for the gypsies, and I wasn't a gypsy, so I said nothing, and then so on and so forth with the Jews and the homosexuals and so on and so forth. This is how this moment feels to me. Like, I already know people directly who have been profiled, who are citizens,